What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for your Overwatch. Really cool pro series to break down here today. Rogue and Envision Overwatch Contenders Season 1. Week 1 has just started and will have been concluded by the time this video goes live, but there'll be many more weeks of Contenders action to look into. To set the stage for the matchup that we're going to be watching right now, Rogue, aka Team France, with their current roster, has been undefeated for many months in the West, cleaning up all sorts of online competitions, the few LANs in the West that we've had. They've won everything. However, all the while, I've been a little bit skeptical of their play because it's been, let's say, ambitious, a bit fast and loose in many ways, oftentimes being able to get away with making what you'd very likely call a mistake or a over-aggressive use of resource. For instance, using ultimates to clutch out a fight that you otherwise probably shouldn't even attempt to. Oftentimes they would still be able to win with this in the West. No analyst really was going to guess that Envision would beat Rogue, especially not in the way that they did. Spoiler alert, Envision wins the series quite convincingly, 3-1. Part of this on the back of the new addition of their main tank, Christopher, who perhaps can shoulder a lot of the responsibility of very clean and disciplined shot calling, which resulted them in upsetting Rogue in this series, along with the fact that, of course, their DPS players definitely competed to a great level as well, but mostly the convincing nature of their win came from really smart shot calling. So that gives us an opportunity to explain what was so great about it and how we can learn to adapt this to our own play. At the very beginning of the series, it looked like everything was going to run in its predictable Rogue fashion. Fast and furious DPS play, convincing team fights, wipe after wipe. Rogue looked to be in the driver's seat, but after that first round, everything turned on its head and Envision turned up. The opening of the second round of Lijiang, Envision actually gains early control thanks to a ranged snipe from their Zenyatta player Kha'Zix. This nets in a few wind fights thanks to Defender's advantage, Envision going up to take a lead of 51% of control. Eventually, with some poking and prodding of team fights, Unco is able to find the opening pick onto the Genji player, and the teamfight steamrolls back from there. Rogue take control. Both teamfights decided on the Zenyatta pickoffs. Remember, Zenyatta is a, quote, support, which remind us that that term is quite flexible of a concept, but a very interesting situation happens here on the defense. Rogue has Defender's advantage, but Unco, under duress, pops his Transcendence in order to stay alive and guarantee the team fight. This proves to be a okay decision. Nico also pops his DPS ultimate so that they convincingly win the fight with Dragon Blade. But one high-level strategy can be shown when a player knows when they don't have to use their ultimate to stay alive, and I might argue that that probably was the case with Unco there. Hindsight is 20/20 after all. But this puts Envision in a very interesting position because now they have both support ultimates online, whereas Rogue only have the sound barrier. That means the target calling for Envision is to find wins on Lucio. If they remove that support ultimate, using their support ultimates will almost guarantee the fight with no other ults being required because support ults give you basically infinite life. A little poking and prodding on the engage, they find the Lucio immediately. They get the information from the peak, discord the target, use the sound barrier of their own to initiate into the fight to make sure that they don't lose any members, guaranteeing that they're going to be able to overwhelm this fight. A small nitpick, I think they actually ended up not needing Kha'Zix Zenyatta ult, but better safe than sorry because regaining control now means that you halt the progression of the objective for Rogue. The faster that you get that done, the better, because if they're able to even stall out on the objective, it's kind of bad for you, even if you eventually win. Whereas if you convincingly win the fight immediately, it lowers the amount of objective progress they get, meaning that even if you lose a fight now, since they're at 70%, instead of being able to stall it for another 20 or so, Envision is able to potentially have another retake in the event that they lose another fight. Next fight comes through, Jaro's Dragon Blade carries it, Wins holds onto a sound barrier until the next fight, when they come in and engage with it, and very similar to the Envision engage with sound barrier, it convincingly wins the fight. But because, like I said, they sort of bought themselves another retake by so quickly winning the other fight. Now they have time to wait and regroup and establish a fight, whereas if there was more objective points for Rogue previously, they'd be panicking to reach the point, right? Now they utilize every second that they have to find the angle of attack that they want. They realize that they're really close to their support ults, and they bide their time in order to build them up. Taking some damage, charging them up, and doing something that's quite an interesting strategy, something that you're going to want to employ for yourself, using support ults on the objective. Getting onto the objective so you physically hold the most important space with your infinite life of support ults means that Rogue has to bring the fight onto the point. They have to contest. It's 99 to 99. They don't have a choice, but you have infinite life and they don't. Meaning that this fight is easily won for Envision. The DPS ults of Rogue do nothing in this situation because the support ults outweigh them, and holding the objective wins it all. But generally speaking, this shows the weakness of the single tank triple DPS composition that Rogue likes to run. If you only have one tank, your point presence is naturally going to be lower because you're dealing with less HP to throw around and cycle in and out. Whereas if you have two tanks, they can rotate their position on the objective, which allows you to even stall out in this type of situation. Like if you have a D.Va here who can eat infinite damage, the fact that Envision have infinite life with their two support ults doesn't really matter because at least you can stall out for some time and not take critical damage while they have those support ults up. D.Va can block damage during that, but Envision utterly okey-dokes them on this engagement. Now going to the last control point, Overwatch Contenders has best of 3, much like Apex and the World Cup, so whoever wins this map wins it all. Envision again get early control of the objective with some good brawling, but eventually lose out, Rogue take control, but the way that Envision retakes something that can be incredibly difficult on this map, traversing over this bridge, even with your own Pharah, can be difficult against an enemy Pharah entrenched defensively. But here I want to gush over the discipline of the engage that we're seeing from Envision. D.Va eating the rocket spam and the potential boop coming out of the enemy Pharah. They take almost no damage at the point of contact as they come around the corner, and because of that, they're able to wait a little bit longer on their cast of Sound Barrier, dropping the beat as the Winston hits the ground, and before you know it, Envision is entirely in the mix of Rogue, engaged onto them with the Sound Barrier on top of them, meaning that they're almost guaranteed with just the positioning, the timing, and the defense matrix usage, alongside the Sound Barrier timing. Any team should be able to do this, is the point I'm trying to make. If you have the coordination to do all of these things, it doesn't matter how much mechanically skilled Rogue are, getting into this engagement this way means that you're almost guaranteed to win it because the enemy D.Va isn't going to be able to protect herself from every angle, and if you have the Sound Barrier on you, there's no penalty really for just getting behind the enemy tank to shoot them in the back. They focus the tanks down, the whole team fight crumbles in the matter of a few seconds. Envision flips the point entirely. Brawling begins to go back and forth, and Rogue show off why they were the most dominant team in the West for so long. They got some DPS stars. They can get some frags, and they do. But even as they start to win the fight, the positioning of Envision to stay alive quite long on the objective to stall it out, and just to get a frag here or there back, allows for a respawn wave to come back from Envision, and eventually, between pulse bombs and rockets, shots find their mark, and Rogue don't sustain the push long enough. That's what's really beautiful about a full Sound Barrier engage like how Envision did, because you want to win those team fights convincingly on a lot of these objectives. It's not really good to get a pick off here or there. You have to close out the fights, which is something that's going to plague Rogue later in the series as well. Rogue did struggle there a bit, but they are incredibly talented players, and on the backs of that, they're going to go on to win Numbani, namely for the performance of Soon in the Streets phase of defense, where he charged up and landed a pulse bomb just about every fight. And when that happens to you, there's almost no coming back from that. It's an incredible amount of value to just land those pulse bombs over and over again, which proved to just be too much for Envision to handle, really. So then when Rogue go on the attack, which they are typically better at than defending, it's pretty much easy cleanup and they win the map. But I want to talk about how disciplined and well organized the Envision attack was, at least on point 1, even if they did falter on the Streets phase. The decision-making and shot calling of this team has really been a beauty to watch because it's been so lacking in the Western scene prior to this series, really. Once again, You see the patience on the dive for them to collect themselves at the point of contact. Winston gets onto the high ground, waits for his jump cooldown to come back. They're all just set up looking to try to find the targets that they know they want, and the coordinated dive around the corner comes in to get on the squishies immediately. The entire team in a scary ball of death. Diving in on the supports means that this is almost a guaranteed couple ticks from this position. Granted, the DPS players of Rogue are sensational. They're able to pick up a kill here or there, but the momentum for Envision, based on the shot call and target selection, was so good with no peel available from Rogue, they're doomed to lose 2 ticks on this point. Now, on the 3rd tick capture, they are able to retake, land some shots, and send Envision packing back to spawn. But now we get into a situation where we're setting up for an ultimate exchange. This is where the most disciplined teams tend to shine, because they really understand what's the most important thing to do when different ultimates are online and are going to be coming into effect into an ult fight. Patient poking and prodding, finding the defense, figuring out where everyone is situated. Sani gets the most value barrage I've ever seen, I think. Looking to avoid his counters over the top, Sani isn't bothering himself to force for frags in the situation. Instead, he's hunting his target. Looking for AKM with that tack visor, they send the tanks to the point to force the fight out. No need necessarily to dive supports here when all you need is another tick. And when AKM turns the corner with guns a-blazing, Pharah has a barrage waiting for him. It's plays like these and organized set-piece engages that should expose a team trying to run triple DPS. It's a greedy composition because you're lacking the tanking capabilities of characters that are really good at blocking ultimates. And typically what happens for Rogue is that even when plays get made like this on them, they're so mechanically skilled that whichever player isn't focused in the 3 DPS lineup is just going to go off on the other side. But that proves to not be good enough against a really coordinated team like Envision seems to be now. It's really impressive because Envision rightfully wasn't expected to beat Rogue because they've kind of not performed very well in the past. But it's set plays like these that make them seem like one of the best shot calling teams in the region, especially if they're able to replicate this kind of success. But only time will tell for that. The 4th and final map came down to some outrageous heroics by Sani once again. This time on the Diva, Sani is able to stall the objective with almost no HP, ducking and dodging on the payload, and for some reason, Rogue doesn't pop him out of mech until the entire respawn wave comes back for Envision. Rogue's 3 DPS split comp works really well in open spaces, the more room that Soon has to be in the backline and to stretch out the engagement for these DPS characters to hit shots in open space, but with their back against the wall, Envision is able to turtle up and stay safe from the tack visor and just outlast all the damage that Rogue is trying to do, buying time to eventually get DPS kills in their own right, and with respawn advantage, holding this point indefinitely. It's the sign of very disciplined teams to be able to close out these tough objectives, to make sure that you use your resources very carefully, because if you don't, good teams are going to be able to make your efforts very inefficient and play the objective in the proper way so that it doesn't really matter how much skill you have to put into the game. If you don't execute a strategy to clean up an objective, you're just going to lose. And this definitely went true for the previous map, which I skipped over at first, but we're going to go back to map 3, which was on Volskaya. 2CP, of course, can be quite frustrating, but at the pro level, it's played very methodically, actually. Or at least it's won when it's played methodically. Both teams had no trouble getting first point, so we're not going to spend any time on that. But on point B, Envision snowball the objective a bit, are able to get another tick, but Defender's advantage comes through, as it often does, to stifle that push. That's okay. As the attacking team, you have to know when it's okay to invest resources into continuing a push or when to be satisfied with the amount you've already gotten. Getting a single tick, and at least a tick at a time per investment push, isn't bad. If you do that over the course of 5 minutes or so, you should complete the map. And it's this discipline, which might on paper be aggravating to play yourself when you're trying to force openings to happen, but it is the right way to play. Envision doesn't use resources unless they're willing to do an entire investment push. Here they try to do it, and Rogue, in fact, stifles it entirely. They get nothing out of this big ultimate fight, which might seem bad, but with a 5-minute time bank, there's still time to fix this. Push after push, if it has to be an eco push, they're fine with that. You only get a few chances at being the attacking team with ultimates in your pocket, so when you use ults, you have to make them count. Unfortunately, this does allow Rogue time to have their defensive ultimates, but being the attacking team, you have a bit of an advantage as you get to set the pace of the fight, since they have to wait for you to come to them. Bully their way onto the point, Wins drops the sound barrier to secure the fight for Rogue, but that's their one defensive ultimate. Not sure if that's the right one to use. I'd much rather prefer they use the EMP if anything, because it charges so fast. And here we see an impressive strategical outplay. Unko is harassing Kha'Zix on Zenyatta, and if she pops EMP, he's a free kill. Drops 150 of his health immediately, and she can clean up the kill after that. So a lot of times what pro Zens do is when they're getting harassed by a good Sombra player, they might pop Trance quite early so that they don't lose their life, and they can start initiating the fight with Trance, and that's what Kha'Zix does here. They use the Trance to close the distance, much like they did on Lijiang, getting their bodies onto the point. The hack does come off, but the Lucio player was hiding the entire time at the point of contact so that he wouldn't get hacked, and he sound barriers after the hack, giving his entire team tons of extra HP. And although they can't use their ability buttons, they can use their basic attacks, and with so much health, the hack is really minimized in its effect. In the massive ultimate exchange, Nico and Nox are able to trade out some kills back, but Envision uses their ultimates so impressively efficiently here, staggering them one after the other. So there's a constant ultimate threat at play, and Envision has ultimates to use when the stagger comes in. That's how you close out these stall fights onto CP. You have to have a closing ultimate or two so that you can very quickly frag those incoming stalling characters. It took Envision quite a long time to capture Objective B, but it's that disciplined, patient play to guarantee that they're going to get the objective in the long game. They don't force out their ultimates early to try to clutch out a fight that looks really close. They wait. They're very patient. They allow the clock to bleed out because 2 CP can feel impossible to capture at times if you don't do this. In comparison, this is a stark difference to the playstyle of Rogue, who also take point A quite quickly as well. They have 7 minutes on the board in order to take point B, but their fast and loose playstyle makes it quite difficult to do against a disciplined team. Ultimates get popped on both sides. Frags happen on both sides. But for the attacking team, it's not good enough to trade out. You have to win a convincing fight. You can't afford to lose any members on the point of contact unless you have tons of ults to clean up the fight like Envision did. With that being the case, I don't see a reason why Unko popped Transcendent so late in the fight here. Yeah, they're able to get a few frags here or there, but they've lost so many members that their focus fire and damage output isn't really fast enough to be able to take use of the unlimited health that the Transcendence gives. And because of that, even with remarkable DPS players, they're unable to secure the kills fast enough, and by the time that Wins pops his sound barrier, there's an EMP to silence it, and Envision pop sound barrier to sustain themselves, denying an entire tick and draining out a lot of the key ultimates that Rogue's gonna need in order to take the point. Envision manage their resources quite differently and are much more careful with their own sound barrier. In the same position that Rogue was on defense, instead of using a sound barrier to guarantee the fight, they use EMP, and only use the sound barrier to save the fight that they otherwise would have lost. Soon picking off their Sombra player was a very scary situation, so sound barrier allows them to bully Rogue off the point, buy time for that respawn to come in, and perhaps even more importantly, buying time for EMP to get charged back up. Now at the point of contact, when the Dragon Blade comes in, Kha'Zix is back from out of spawn, and is able to completely nullify the effect of the Nano Blade using EMP to silence the dash resets, which, as we can see when Jarl pops his Nano Blade on the back end, how powerful it is. One of my favorite EMP interactions is to pop it on to a committed Nano Blade. The ultimate economy swing is amazing, and is in a way turns Sombra's ult into a defensive ult. Typically you think of Transcendence, Sound Barrier, even Mercy Res as a defensive ult, but a very crucially timed EMP can function the same way, on Nano Blade at least. This stifles out the entire push for Rogue, and it's these major macro play decision making that Envision was just always a step ahead of Rogue in this series. Really impressive play coming from Contenders, seeing as it was only in Apex where Rogue's risky style was exposed to be as risky as it is. But now, if teams like Envision are going to be stepping up to the plate to have a stronger command of Overwatch, no longer will it be possible to win purely based on mechanical play, because the strategy of Overwatch is too well developed. Mechanics definitely matter, and you have to be sick to play at the pro level, but if you don't account properly for the strategy of the game, you're going to see teams that are filled with all-stars like Rogue fall, making it an exciting time for Overwatch esports when a team that most deemed to not be good enough can win with strategy. I hope other teams in the West start to take notes and start to take seriously how much more effective you can be when you really master the management of the macro game of Overwatch. If you enjoyed the video and you found it useful, please leave a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. Especially on these longer breakdown videos, they take a lot of work to make, so I hope you appreciate that, and letting us know that you do really means a lot to us. You can leave a comment on your thoughts of the video, but a single button press can also help make my day. If you haven't already, please subscribe, because we upload each and every day, so you're going to want to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Linked in the description, you can check out our Twitter and our Discord server, where you can interact with our community and find teammates to pair up with. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.